Horror and shocking news reaching us this morning. First of all, Lars Klingbeil knows ordinary women who want to work more. What happened at the school in Kaiserslautern is simply unbelievable. They let children vote, and the election result doesn't fit at all into the public broadcasting narrative. And last but not least, I really have to tell you this. These 80% Syrians who are supposed to be deported amount to 5,000 people out of the 1.2 million who have come here. So yes, exactly the apartments that we lack here in Germany, there is basically a Syrian share, and at most 5,000 to 10,000 of them could be deported. Let's start with the first clip. Lars Klingbeil knows women.
In fact, I meet many women who say I'd like to work more, but for that you need to abolish the spousal income splitting. Because right now there are absolutely no tax incentives for us to work more. There are many women who would like to work more.
Well, I don't know what kind of women Lars Klingbeil knows. I'll show you one later, probably someone like that. However, I don't know a single woman who would say something like that about herself. Maybe some non-governmental organization sponsored women who think that all men are criminals. Yes, maybe with them, they might say they can't go to work because of the income splitting for married couples. My wife herself has been working for years. Even when I still had a very large company, she went to work just like normal. We never really cared that we had income splitting for married couples or anything like that. If someone wants to work, they go to work. However, if you get rid of that, then you force a lot of people not to be able to take care of their children anymore. And then, well, to have girls like these, which I'll show you now, and I have to say that's actually pretty good news, which makes me happy, especially for the content on YouTube. And we should all be happy when this company shuts down. If I could ask you for just one thing, if you'd like to support this channel, please leave me a like and a subscription. It helps me a lot to tell you the truth out there, what the press is really like and what the press is completely hiding from us.
Did you hear what Elon Musk is planning now? The founder of OF Blauweiss, you know what I mean, has passed away. And Elon Musk has now publicly said he wants to buy OF and have it completely deleted. What will we all do then? What will you do? What will I do?
I don't know about you, but when I'm researching content, I watch a lot less of this nonsense. Yeah, and the internet will probably get a bit quieter too. If you're not constantly trying to direct kids to some platform, because well, you know what it's all about. I'd actually be glad and think it'd be good if Elon Musk shut down this network. However, I also have to tell you, did you hear about that at the vocational school in Kaiserslautern? That really takes the cake. I'm shocked to my core. I don't know if you can see it on me. Let's briefly take a look below before I play you this clip.
At Vocational School 1, they held a mock election among the students a few days ago. The principal is showing us the results.
What stood out was that the alternative for Germany had almost 40%, and it was also noticeable that the major parties, Christian Democratic Union and Social Democratic Party, were less strong. Yes, but what stood out was that the alternative for Germany got so many votes.
The right-wing scene is cheering, calling everything lies from the hated media. We've always known it, but this version has nothing to do with reality.
So that was what is actually different at vocational schools compared to regular schools, for example? What is different compared to the elections? Well, at vocational schools, there are people who are in training, so a very high proportion. Well, you already know German teenagers, German children, and of course they feel increasingly threatened also because of the time they spent at school. And of course, yes, I'm talking about an extremely high proportion and not just Germans, so don't get me wrong now. So, and exactly for this reason, I have to tell you, that's why we end up with such an election result. And now let's just take away the unfortunately, because that will show exactly what we can expect in the future. Because in the elections, more and more people, now also in the Social Democratic Party and the Christian Democratic Union, are dying off. And the working middle class, meaning the people who get up in the morning, like me, at 5:30, sometimes at 4:30, and do my job, and on top of that, also have this YouTube channel. These people will eventually be supported. Or rather, called upon again to get this country back on track. That's my glimmer of hope in the morning. And then, of course, there's always a slap in the face for me again, where I have to say, oh man, if all you can do in politics is lie, then it's time for a change in politics, and not to take on even more debt.
Glimmer of hope. What are the numbers? How many Syrians do we have here? What is their status? What is the situation right now? Opinions?
And we have 1.2 million people of Syrian descent, of which 300,000 have already been naturalized.
1,2 Millionen.
So, to put it another way, that's exactly the number of apartments missing here in Germany. Yes, it's exactly that number. If 1.2 million people were to leave Germany, then mathematically speaking, of course, it's not a one-to-one situation, but that's how it would be. We would have an apartment for everyone, a so-called rental space for everyone, and no one would have to live in any kind of barracks or anything like that, and we would have definite relief here. But now, just listen for a moment, and I'll really let this run as a major quotation, right? Listen very carefully to what he has to say now and how many contradictions there are just in the context he's talking about now.
The individual case review. The Chancellor said at a press conference last week that there is no longer any reason for asylum. But in a state governed by the rule of law, this must be examined in each individual case. That means the Federal Office for Migration and Refugees now has to look at each person's individual situation again, and then 3 things will be checked. Isn't there, in rare cases, still a threat of persecution? Because someone was a human rights activist or a critical journalist who is now also being persecuted by the new Islamist government, this will affect a minority. The second question is, what about the security situation? The civil war is over, and while the security situation is not good, in large parts of Syria, it is probably not so bad anymore. That is to say, there is this subsidiary protection status that many people currently have because of the civil war, and then there remains a third question. And that has a lot to do with the statement made by Johann Wadefull. German courts say that people must not be deported into situations of extreme poverty either. They derive this from the prohibition of torture. And they specifically check whether a bed, bread, and soap are available. And that means a bed stands for simple accommodation, which can even be a tent. Bread means that you have something to eat without having to go hungry, and soap stands for basic health care. And then each individual case is examined. So Syria is not generally classified as sufficiently safe or unsafe, but instead they look at which region someone comes from and whether they can work in Syria. Does he have family networks that can support him, especially in the beginning?
But you should ask if you have family there. And for each case, how long does that usually take?
It would take a very long time, especially if you actually did it, because many would take it to court and sue, which is their right. But there are already 180,000 asylum lawsuits piling up in the German administrative courts. And if even more are added, then the proceedings would take much longer than before. Right now, we're at 15 months.
From you, Mr. Thum, until the end of the legislative period, you have now presented all of this, what that means legally, the objection, the individual case review, and so on. We're talking about a maximum of 5,000 to 10,000. So 1% of the Assyrians currently living in Germany in 3.5 years of deportation.
Forced repatriation by plane?
I had to let that sink in when I heard it too. 5,000 people. He explained really well why there are actually so few people. And again, well, it's a lie. That means for the next elections, if they last that long, we'll probably only see one thing. That means 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th deportation flights. And then they'll say, yes, we saved you, along with what happened in Cologne and Kaiserslautern. This government wonders why the Social Democratic Party will soon be facing the 10% barrier, and why this morning. Yes, the Alternative for Germany is about to overtake the Christian Democratic Union again. And yes, I have to say it as it is. In the Christian Democratic Union, people are simply dying off. So we got a very clear statement there. Deportations like that will not happen in Germany with these governments unless the legal system is changed. And Merz is by no means capable of that anymore. With that, I wish you a wonderful day, a wonderful start to your day. I don't know yet if I'll be able to make 1 or 2 extra videos today. My wife is turning 40 today, so we have to celebrate a bit.